Once upon a time, Atari were the market giants in computer and video gaming. After their breakout success with the Pong machine in 1972, they took the world by storm with the hugely popular Atari 2600 home console. For a time, it looked as if Atari could do no wrong, but alas, by the late 1980s, Atari's once vice-like grip on the video games market had loosened, paving the way for the likes of Sega and Nintendo to battle for supremacy. Atari soon found their aging consoles struggling to compete with blast processing and Super FX chips, and their 5200 and 7800 console offerings went largely unnoticed on shelves that were now adorned by shiny new Sega Mega Drives and Super Nintendos. Meanwhile, however, Atari was still competing admirably on the home computer front, their ST and Falcon range of machines rivaling the Commodore's Amiga range. However, it soon became clear to Atari that if they were to remain in the hearts, minds, and more importantly, the wallets of the discerning gaming public, they had to go bigger and better than everybody else. Their first attempt was the 16-bit Lynx handheld console, which went head-to-head with the Game Boy and spectacularly failed. Yet Atari were undeterred, and so it was in 1993, in the midst of the 16-bit console wars, and with the Panasonic 3DO ushering in a brave new 32-bit era, they announced their cutting-edge new 64-bit console, the Atari Jaguar, promising twice the power of the 3DO, favouring cartridge technology over the then much too sluggish CD formats, and an initial retail price of £200, the Jaguar was a meteoric leap forward for console kind. But how, with 32-bit machines only just appearing on the horizon, could a 64-bit machine be possible already? Well, the Jaguar wasn't exactly 64-bit by any standard that we might recognise today, but the dual 32-bit processors, dubbed Tom and Jerry, nestled in its complex architecture, were enough for Atari to consider it a 64-bit behemoth, and that became its unique selling point, as seen in their now infamous You Do the Math advertisement campaign. Whether the Jag was truly 64-bit or not remains the topic of heated debate today, but in any case, the Jaguar stood out at the time for its technically superior graphics and sound, as showcased in its pack-in title Cybermorph. But it proved difficult to develop games for, and third-party support was, as a consequence, hard to come by. Many of the games that made it to the Jag were little more than ports of games for previous systems, which took little advantage of the super-powered hardware capabilities. These issues and a lukewarm critical response on release, much of the criticism being directed at the oddly designed control pad, sealed the Jaguar's fate, and the console dropped from the market in 1996, selling no more than 250,000 units. Now, what happened to Atari after this is a story for another time, but needless to say, it was Atari's last ever console, choosing instead to concentrate on only software as a subsidiary of Infogrames. In 2002, UK store Game acquired all unsold Atari Jaguar hardware and games and flogged them all at super low clearance prices. Lucky shoppers could pick up a Jaguar for as little as 30 quid. Famously, the Jaguar's design patents were released into the public domain, and the recognisable shell of the console has been spotted in this, dental camera equipment, and most notoriously, the Coleco Chameleon. It's all too easy to dismiss the Jaguar as just another failed console in an era when everyone and his dog were making them, but looking back today, it's possible to appreciate it as a perfectly serviceable machine that showed some promise, but didn't get a fair shake. The Jaguar's modest library of 50 officially licensed games does in fact harbour a good selection of quite enjoyable and impressive titles. This would be the part where I would introduce my top 5 games, but I've talked quite enough for one video, so this time I've invited some friends whose love for the Atari Jaguar is much stronger than my own to share their favourite Atari Jaguar games. So, to begin, here's Ctrl-Alt-Rees.
Think of the Atari Jaguar and you'll probably be picturing 3D games like Cybermorph, Iron Soldier, Alien vs Predator, or maybe the excellent ports of Wolfenstein 3D and Doom. but one thing that's often overlooked is that the Jaguar was also a very capable 2D system, with powerful hardware scrolling and sprite scaling capabilities. These capabilities, when coupled with the Jag's powerful sound chip, made for a great 2D gaming experience, and were put to great use with some really top-notch platformers on the system, like Flashback, Bubsy, Rayman, and the game I want to showcase today, Zool II. The sequel to 1992's multi-platform hit Zool, the Jaguar version of Zool II was released in 1994, a year after its initial Amiga release. Zool II is a colourful and fast-paced platformer with speed to rival Sonic the Hedgehog in places, and big detailed sprites and graphics superior to what we saw in the Amiga and DOS versions. Unfortunately, with the Sony PlayStation, Nintendo 64 and Sega Saturn hitting the market, bringing with them an exciting new wave of 3D games, mid-90s gamers were growing tired of platformers, and Zool 2 wasn't a big seller on the Jag, shifting around 11,000 copies in total globally. Personally, I think Zool 2 is a bit of a hidden gem on the Jaguar, which is sadly overlooked in favour of its DOS and Amiga counterparts, but well worth seeking out for fans of the franchise and fans of platformers in general.
For my Jaguar game, I am going to be talking about one that was a favourite of mine from when I first had the machine way back when, and that is, put it the right way, Iron Soldier. Now, there's a lot to love about Iron Soldier. It, first of all, is a truly impressive game for the time, with giant robot mechs running around in a 3D environment, with helicopters and tanks and lots of buildings around you. It felt like a really full world in fully 3D, and yet whilst it didn't look as good as a lot of games coming out on other platforms, in fact of course it didn't look as good as the follow-up game on the Atari Jaguar, it was still pretty impressive for the time. But also one of the best things about the game, just a very simple very simple best thing, was it was one of the first games I got that actually properly used the whole keypad part of the Atari Jaguar joystick. Now this is, if you don't know, the keypad here, which is normally a set of like almost old phone number style numbers. It could have little overlays that games would have a snap-on part to cover up to give you different buttons, and this genuinely used it. It let you change options in the robots and move things around and all sorts of stuff. It was a proper use of that part of the Atari Jaguar joystick, and it made it make sense. So a great game using all of the Atari Jaguar's features, and the sequel's great as well, although I do still prefer the simplicity of the first one.
Top-down racing games, a classic genre and one that is still popular. But mostly what's popular is Micro Machine style circuit races. Top-down rally games are a much rarer beast, but almost something the perspective is better suited to. That wasn't always the case. The Neo Geo had some classics, most notably personal favourite Thrash Rally, but the king of the early 90s was Power Drive on Amiga, a game so innovative and influential that they even wrote its name on every Amiga as a thank you. Ports made their way to the usual places, but there is only one place to play the sequel. It's a sequel so obscure people don't even know it's a sequel, especially given the extreme branding similarity. And if we're honest, the fairly extreme game similarity. But Power Drive Rally on the Atari Jaguar is technically a system exclusive. And if you offer me a system exclusive driving game, then I'm there faster than you can, well, drive. Power Drive Rally is more varied than you might think. The central thrust of the game is an arcade game-like career mode whose lives mechanic is simply that entering, and indeed retrying races, costs you some of your prize money. Prize money you'll also be spending on repairing your car after repeatedly knocking it into various parts of the scenery and or other cars. Other cars? Why yes, because Power Drive Rally's career mode includes not only familiar rally-style special stages, but also rallycross races against opponents, and even skills tests that I was absolutely super good at and did not foul up ever. The conditions have variety too, as day turns to night and it starts raining, even thundering on occasion. Further in, you visit Sweden and have to deal with snow and ice on the track, making it even more likely you'll damage your motor. This isn't just a repair number. You'll need to deal with your lights cutting out and your car leaving trails of engine blood on the track behind you. Other people, in this very video, will correctly extol the virtues of games like Alien vs Predator. And they're right, but they're also a bit obvious. Power Drive Rally, at least in part because people don't realise it exists, is a hidden gem of the Jaguar's sadly slightly constrained library, and isn't even that expensive to procure. Could an Amiga have done this? Maybe. But an Amiga didn't. The Jaguar did, and you should play it.
And so that was the Atari Jaguar, and a selection of must-play games. Do you own an Atari Jaguar? Is it all that? Or is it nothing but a fancy doorstop for your games room? Is there a game in particular that you enjoy that wasn't mentioned in today's video? Do feel free to give me a shout in the comments. Many thanks to Ctrl-Alt-Rees, Re-Enthused, Wayland Yutani Xenomorph and Dudley of Yesterzine for their most excellent contributions to this video. Their channel links are in the description below, so please be sure to give them a subscribe and follow. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share and subscribe for more. If you're already subscribed, please ensure that you've clicked the bell icon so you can be notified of new content. If you'd like to support this channel, please consider becoming a member over on Patreon. Subs cost a single $1 and all patrons will receive on-screen credit in all future videos. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time on Retro Respawn.